Yo, what's up? What's going on? What's good, everybody? That's right. The Boxing Source checking in here for the October 22nd, 2023 episode of the Boxing Source podcast here. And we got a few things that we're going to be going over, man. We had a good amount of action that went down yesterday. We had something that kind of like threw off the boxing scene a little bit here with what happened in the welterweight division. And, we're going to be dropping it. You're going to be going down as to what's going to be happening in reference to the welterweight division when you had this result that came down yesterday. That was a big upset of sorts. There is Giovanni Santillan, man. He showed some really good skills against Alexis Rocha in that bout that was in Inglewood, California. Alexis Rocha was coming in there, on a high. I mean, record of 23 wins and 1 loss, was shown as the NABO welterweight champion. Had that particular belt for a while. I mean, at least for about a year. And had, a couple of defenses of that. He was, standing as that number 1 contender in the WBO welterweight rankings there. But he had this fight lined up against Giovanni Santillan. Santillan was coming in there undefeated, man. I mean, Santillan had a record of 31 wins and no losses. I think, we had like couple of times when he had been shown on television some time back. Forgot which joint it was where he was featured on TV, but he's been campaigning there around the welterweight division for some time now. But had his unbeaten streak here going into this particular bout. Had 31 wins, 16 wins by way of knockout, and had a few fights last year, and then I had a fight earlier this year against Eric Bone in the welterweight division or around the welterweight division before being lined up to fight Alexis Rocha. And up until that particular point, he had been around there at the top 5 or so in the WBO rankings. Just below Errol Spence, Rashidi Ellis, and Cody Crowley, with Alexis Rocha there at number 1. But here in this bout, man, you had this kind of like saying, hey, I mean, maybe Alexis Rocha could get this win and keep it standing there at the top of the WBO rankings. Real quick, big shout out to Bruce Gas Boxing Jazz and More. Y'all be sure to catch Bruce Gas Boxing Jazz and More on his channel. Very great analysis of fights there on his channel, and has been, supporting a lot of these boxing channels out here, man. So salute to Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz, More checking in here on the live. But big ups for everybody that's joining in here live in this particular podcast. But back, to what we had here in the welterweight division. Looks like, Giovanni Santillan just was walking through a whole lot of those shots that Alexis Rocha was throwing there early in this particular bout, but what he was throwing back was some big bombs. A lot of those left and right hooks were taking a toll on Alexis Rocha there, within the second and third rounds. And so you kind of like seeing Santillan really, build on that momentum and just say, you know what, I'm gonna allow Alexis Rocha to land a couple of shots here and there as long as I'm able to land 2 or 3 big bombs. And that's pretty much what it was. But he was throwing, 3 punch combinations, 4 punch combinations there against Alexis Rocha, and, was able to affect Rocha there within the 4th and then in the 5th round, where he scored, those knockdowns, those first couple of knockdowns in the 5th round. He was able to put Alexis Rocha down to the canvas, and it was just something where, Rocha was just getting battered in this particular fight. And it's one thing, when you have, the momentum that Alexis Rocha had in his previous wins, against Anthony Young and George Ashley earlier this year. He scored, KO victories in those particular bouts. But here against Santillan was able to take all of those shots early. And when he was able to do that and come back and respond, that was, something there that kind of like said, uh-oh, man, hey, maybe Alexis Rocha is in trouble here in this particular bout. And well, it seemed like right there, and it was supposed to be like midway through the fight, but it was the fifth round. We just saw Alexis Rocha just catch, a bunch of those combinations from Giovanni Santillan, and Santillan was able to score, not just one knockdown, but two knockdowns there in that fight or in that round, fifth round. And then in the sixth round, it was just, too much punishment that was coming from Giovanni Santillan there. And, once Rocha went down to the canvas again, that was it, man. It was a wrap. It was over. It was done. It was done. That was it. And, hey, Santillan getting that victory, man. The KO victory over Alexis Rocha, handing Rocha his second loss of his professional career. That was the, first time that he got stopped there in his professional career. And Santillan, I mean, he takes over as that NABO welterweight champion. I don't know, like, what it'll kind of like be as far as like the standing for the WBO rankings. On the real, I've been looking to see if the WBO had updated their rankings for this month. They haven't done that at this particular point. I know that they had their convention, just recently, but they haven't updated their rankings in the WBO. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of like, if they do put in an update this coming week, how the welterweight rankings will reflect here, given this recent result of Giovanni Santillan defeating Alexis Rocha. Now, I mean, Rocha was supposed to be the supposed mandatory challenger for the WBO welterweight championship. And, for those that have been following, of course, Terrence Crawford was WBO or is WBO super champion in the welterweight division. That gives, a certain level of exception when it comes to mandatory defenses. Some felt that like his mandatory defense should have been called earlier this year. It was not. But even before that, he had the fight lined up with Errol Spence for the undisputed title. He won. He's the undisputed champion. Now, it's just a matter of, okay, what is going to be next there in the welterweight division, especially given what has happened here in this sense as Giovanni Santillan has scored that win. But, besides that, I mean, Santillan kind of like is, one of those guys that kind of, was, I guess it was a little bit of a shocker of sorts, for some that were in attendance there in the Forum in Inglewood. And, if folks, fans were kind of like, searching about, how some folks were reacting to it. You had, of course, the promoter for this fight card, Oscar De La Hoya from Golden Boy Promotions. He was like, "Hey man, I never seen Giovanni fight like that. This was a shock. I didn't see this from him." Giving him a basic Oscar reaction, that type of thing. But with Oscar, I mean, he was kind of looking to try to position Alexis Rocha to get a world title shot this year. But given, like I said, with the situation with Terrence Crawford, it was undisputed or nothing this year. So once that was out of the way, now it's like, okay, what's next? You know what I'm saying? Real quick, big shout out to that guy in the building. What's happening with you? What's going on here? Thanks for joining in here on the live conversation. Back to it, man. I mean, yeah, I thought Rocha was going to be in position to, be a mandatory challenger, for those for the WBO title. But with him taking his bout and him losing, that kind of murkies up things there. This kind of like reminded me of the situation in the IBF where you had a long standing Abdul Kakarov was the number one contender in the IBF. Didn't get the world title shot, but ended up losing to Cody Crowley, and that muddled up things there when it came to that mandatory situation for the IBF. So this could be the same situation. Now, with Santillan, getting this win, he's like, hey man, this kind of like puts me up there in the welterweight rankings. And after the fight, he was calling for a fight against Mario Barrios, and yeah, I mean that does seem like a really really good bout there, Bruce Gas. Santillan versus Barrios sounds good, especially Santillan coming off of his win. Mario Barrios, on September 30th, scoring that win over Yordenis Ugas. Scored 2 knockdowns against Yordenis Ugas in a unanimous decision victory. And he was able to get that right. Now with Barrios, for me, I'm trying to get in contact with Mario Barrios, get another follow-up interview with him. After he had his victory last month, he was in Australia to support Brian Mendoza and Mendoza's fight against Tim Tszyu last week. So he has been kind of like getting back into his home area, San Antonio, whatnot. So trying to see if I could follow up with that, see if I could get Mario Barrios in with the interview, once again to see how he sees this welterweight division now, after his win, and then of course given what's happened with Santillan getting his victory over Alexis Rocha, man. I thought that it would have been a good little matchup between Rocha and Santillan, but for Santillan, that just looked like it was his best performance of his career up to this point. He looked like he just ran through Alexis Rocha and what Rocha was able to do here in that bout. You know what I'm saying? Now Rocha, like I said, I mean he had his good string of victories since 2020 when he lost to Speedy Rashidi in Indio, California, man. But after that, he scored those victories. Of course, a notable victory over Blair Cobbs. But then after that, got himself in position to be up there in the WBO rankings. And then once he scored a couple of victories there, they were just like seeing if they could campaign for him to get a world title shot. But this is like one of those instances where, hey, you gotta be on your toes in any fight that you're lined up with, because you never know what the opponent has for you. And I know that a world title shot might be there right in front of you, or could be there soon, but you got to be able to make sure that you, as they say, take care of home. And this is kind of like how you had Joe Joyce there when he was the interim champ, WBO interim champ in the heavyweight division. And when he ends up fighting Zhilei Zhang in that first bout, it gets torched up, and that ends up happening. And here, for me, I think Alexis Rocha kind of like said, hey, maybe this was not the right kind of matchup to go into before trying to get that opportunity to fight for a world title. So the big setback here for Alexis Rocha, now 23-2 in his professional career, and Giovanni Santillan is there now at 32-0. But yeah, I mean, Santillan versus Mario Barrios, I mean that could be a really good scrap there between those two welterweight contenders. You had Mario Barrios, as of this point, he is a interim champion. They're the WBC interim champion there. That's Mario Barrios. And so now you got him, you got Santillan around the top there in the welterweight rankings, but you got those guys. You got, of course, Ron Boots Ennis, interim IBF champion. And we really ain't seen that many people mentioning Boots Ennis' name out there. You know what I'm saying? And from what I'm hearing, there have been a number of fighters that could have been in the ring against Boots Ennis at least before the end of this year, and it was like, nah. So I mean, I guess we could get something like this with Santillan and Barrios. And given what happened, or the news of what happened earlier this week, as far as like, the thing with Showtime Boxing being, ending after the end of this year, but that's Showtime Sports overall. But, you know, Oscar was talking about, hey, maybe we could, do something, work better to, try to make the fights that, the fight fans want to see, or whatever it is. But, I'll believe it when I see it. Shout out that guy. What he's saying here, I really did think Rocha for the decision, but, I'm always happy to be wrong. Hey, I mean, that's boxing sometimes. You know what I'm saying? That's boxing. Rocha was, coming in there as the taller fighter, 5'10" with a 70-inch reach, but I think, the fighting style they had in this particular bout just didn't work out for him. And it just ended up being a bad break there for Alexis Rocha, on his way to, really contending for one of those world titles. And so now, like I said, I got to wait to see what happens here with the WBO rankings, how they're going to place Rocha here in this particular instance. And then they're going to see about, boosting Santillan pretty much around the top of those WBO welterweight rankings. Of course, like I said, Terrence Crawford is the undisputed champion, WBO super champion. There was some things floating around about, the WBO granting Terrence Crawford the ability to, challenge Tim Tszyu for the super welterweight title that Tim Tszyu has. But I didn't see that on the WBO website. I didn't see it from them. I didn't see any notice in reference to, the super welterweight title outside of, them getting Tim Tszyu as super welterweight title. I didn't see anything in reference to them saying anything about the mandatory for the welterweight title. So that whole thing with the WBO, like I said, I'm going to wait, a couple days here this week to see how that goes in reference to that. But yeah, with Giovanni Santillan getting this big win, man, this kind of like, boosts him up there in the welterweight rankings. I don't know if you put kind of like put him around the top 10 or something like that, maybe. But this really like boosts him up there in the welterweight division. I mean, we still don't know what's going to happen with, like I said, with Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence. I mean, I don't know if that's still, in the works or whatever it is. At least it's not going to be for this year. I just don't see it. But maybe they'll have something for next year, given what the, situation is going to be for that. But outside of that, you still have these other welterweight contenders out there. And now you'll have Giovanni Santillan, putting his name there in the hat for, that particular division. So, that was mainly one of the things there that kind of, happened. I was also on the lookout for, what was happening there with, Joshawn James and David Stevens there. So you had, Joshawn James being able to hand David Stevens his first loss of his pro career there. There ended up being a first knockout loss there. So that was crazy. That was crazy there to see that, there in that the zone telecast. So because we had talked about it, at least me and Joseph Farron of War Week Radio, we were talking about it in the last podcast there with Coach Ronnie Shields. So seeing that particular that particular result, yeah, that was something there that kind of like was a shock to me right there, So you did have that, but also a few other fights that happened in there. What was it? Ronald Batista losing to John Ramirez, and also Ricardo Sandoval versus Victor Sandoval, where Ricardo ended up winning by unanimous decision. So those were, a couple of bouts there that happened in that. And also Gabriela Fundora, there, of course, the sister of Sebastian Fundora, was able to score a knockout win there over Arlie Musino to win the IBF flyweight title. So Now we have Gabriela Fedora as a world champion there in the Fedora family. So that's the thing. Yeah, man. Losses don't mean everything, but you know how it is sometimes in the boxing game, man. Like everybody wants to write these fighters off after one loss, and that's pretty much what kind of like is the the main setback of the sport in this sense is that a lot of times I don't think it's for me it's not. Some say it's that fighters don't want to lose their O. I say it's more that they want to get paid so much money in order to put their record on the line. So it's really a business. It's really business, at the end of the day. And a lot of times the fights that, we don't necessarily get, or fans say they don't necessarily get, is mainly because it be costing too much money, man. It be costing too much money, But we'll see, in reference to the thing with Rocha, though, like, hey, I think we're still going to see him in action, man. They're still going to line, some fights up for him. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily, be surprised if they say that there could be another fight between Rocha and Santillan, man. I wouldn't be surprised, But hey, boxing kind of like, gives us some random things, you know what I'm saying? I reference to how matchups are kind of like set up and done. So who knows? But you might see Rocha against Santillan again, probably like next year, if anything. Depends on what happens with Santillan and how they're gonna, match him up here in the welterweight division. Especially if they could, if they can't get that Barrios fight lined up, then maybe you could see Alexis Rocha there once again against Giovanni Santillan. So we'll see how that goes. But moving forward, you also had in the the super lightweight division. You had Jack Catterall against Jorge Linares. Of course, Jack Catterall was a world title challenger. There in the 140-pound division, had that fight against Josh Taylor, man, where they had Josh Taylor getting a win. Back then, man, I said, man, Taylor got cooked in that fight. I really feel like Taylor got cooked in that fight, and that Jack Catterall had got the win, but they ended up giving the decision or whatever to Josh Taylor for him to keep those belts. But now he was coming up here against Jorge Linares. Linares, of course, being a world champion in was it the lightweight division and whatnot. It's been in a number of fights in not just the lightweight division, but super featherweight division and the featherweight division. So he's been a multi-division world champion. But of course, this is in the tail end, of his career. You know what I'm saying? And ever since having that bout against Devin Haney a couple of years ago, he's had a string of losses. So we've pretty much said like this kind of like was wrapping as far as like where Linares was at. So we kind of like seen here with this, it was more of like what would Jack Catterall do against a veteran like Jorge Linares? You know what I'm saying? But here in this sense, man, you had Jack Catterall getting a decision victory over Linares. He was able to, sting Linares a couple of times over the course of the fight, but nothing where, we kind of like said, hey, man, he could have like really, impressed, folks as far as like what he could do there in the 140-pound division. That guy, he was super cooked there. And I'm like, man, it was barbecue chicken. Barbecue chicken, man. You know what I'm saying? With Josh Taylor, man, it was like barbecue chicken, man. But they gave Josh Taylor that win, man. It was crazy, man. It was crazy. But they gave Josh Taylor that win, and that kind of really, affected things there at the 140-pound division, man. Shoot, I mean, after that, you seen that Josh Taylor like gave up just about every one of those belts for one, and then what in his very next fight against Teofimo Lopez, he ended up getting beat, and it wasn't really a close fight, So now it's like you got, Jack Catterall, still there as far as like trying to compete or contend there in the super lightweight division. His fight here against Jorge Linares, they kind of had Catterall still being a contender of sorts there for the WBA belt. But outside of that, I'm not sure as far as like where you could position Jack Catterall as far as like these other contenders and world champions there. Of course, we have Rolly Romero as a world champion in the super lightweight division. You got Subriel Matias, of course, Teofimo Lopez, as I mentioned, and you got Regis Prograis, who will be facing Devin Haney. So, now here with Jack Catterall, like how would he be, positioned as far as like, where he could be as far as like that 140-pound division. Now, after this bout, he said, man, he wanted to have that rematch with Josh Taylor, but man, I just don't see that fight happening. I don't even know where Josh Taylor is going to be at this particular point, like what his direction is going to be at this point, like where he's going to fight, where he's going to fight next, whether it's at 140 or 147. I just don't know. But as far as like him, having another fight with Jack Catterall, shoot, they didn't have it anyway. So they pretty much like, when they had the chance to have that rematch, they pretty much moved on from it. So if they moved on from it, then I just don't really see that fight happening right now. So, that's the thing I got, off of that, saying. Real quick, he says, how do you see a Joshua and Ben Davison relationship going? Man. This comes off of, news that was circulating that, Anthony Joshua, may have, parted ways with Derek James as a head trainer. That kind of like is some wild news. If that's the case, I had to follow up with that. From messages that I've been seeing, I hadn't seen anything that kind of like said that that Joshua was parting ways with Derek James. But I mean, I will say this though. Derek James, had like a lot on his plate. I said this in reference to, the fights that had happened, with, Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. And then, recently here with Jamel Charlo and Canelo Alvarez, is that, Derek James has, had a lot on his plate. Reference to, these guys that have, fought at a high level for a while. And, it's one thing, you can have a high and then you can have a low. Last year, you had, Derek James with, Errol Spence. He scored the knockout stoppage win over, your Dennis Ugas. And then a month later, you had, Jamel Charlo stopping Brian Carlos Castaño, and so everybody was on a high then. But, when he had, these string of losses, a lot of folks were saying like, hey, is it Derek James, or, what's going on? But even with that, right? When it came to Anthony Joshua, and he had his fights, right? He had his fight against, against Selenius recently. He had his, fight before that, where he, tried to, go get back in the gear. And my thing was in that fight against Jermaine Franklin, folks were kind of like expecting him to get the knockout against Jermaine Franklin. didn't necessarily do that. And then, even with the thing with Robert Hellenius, it was almost like his timing wasn't good or anything like that. Like he wasn't, really doing things that kind of said that he would be back in the gear. So if he wasn't getting those answers from, Derek James, then maybe Josh would kind of like move elsewhere. But even with that, I mean, like, what was it? You would have, that would be your fourth trainer, your fourth head trainer if you're going to go there with Ben Davison. And me, I'm not, much of a Ben Davison type of a fan in a sense, man. Of course, he had his highs. Folks were like, on him for, what he did with Tyson Fury in that, what was it, that first bout or so against Deontay Wilder. But outside of that, like we had just mentioned, they're with Josh Taylor, right? Against Jack Catterall. Who was in the corner of Josh Taylor in that Jack Catterall fight? Ben Davison. So we kind of like had those ups and downs there with Ben Davison. I know that there are a number of other trainers there in the UK that really aren't much of a fan of Ben Davison. So if he kind of like is saying about maybe having that thing there with Ben Davison, then we'll see how that goes. But I do know that Joshua has really pushed for having a fight before the end of this year. So if he does have that, then maybe we see, what's next. But other than that, I don't know, because it just seems like Joshua is kind of like had his peak, very early in his career, and so now it's like, what's out there, what can he do as far as like building himself up. He's trying to have as many fights as possible that he didn't have while he was, unified champion. He was fighting like 2 times a year or whatever it was, when he was unified champion at best. But outside of that, he's only fought like 1 time a year. Like he had those fights against Alexander Usyk, and that was pretty much it. So as a pro fighter, especially at that level of experience, you got to have as many fights as possible to keep sharpening your tools. And as of right now, he's had a couple of fights this year. Wants to have one more fight, but if he's still having that little ordeal with Derek James and that camp, I mean, we'll see how that goes. Shout out to Juice in the building. What's going on with your Juice? We just chopped it up in reference to that Santillan Rocha bout, and the thing there with Jack Catterall having this win over Jorge Linares, who like I said, I mean, Jorge Linares has been in the game for a very long time, man. And so Jack Catterall, I expect them to try to be, very impressive in this particular bout. But, he did have 2 scores of 8 rounds to 4 and 1 score of 9 rounds to 3 against Jorge Linares. But Linares is coming off of 3 consecutive losses. And if you want to, really make a statement as far as like being a contender there, the 140-pound division, Jack Catterall, you gotta be able to handle Jorge Linares at this particular point, but he wasn't able to do that, So I know it. Like I said, I know that he wants to have that fight with Josh Taylor, rematch with Josh Taylor, but man, I just don't see it. I don't see it. You know what I'm saying? So that guy says, Davison seems okay with smaller guys, but heavyweight ain't his bag. Like dealing with the big guys ain't his bag. You had that other fight too with Tyson Fury, what it was, with Otto Wallin, right? Where Otto Wallin was able to, really do some damage there to Tyson Fury. And with that ended up being a win for Tyson Fury, but that was really close to being a disaster there in that particular bout too. So for me, I mean, I thought that like Ben Davison is more of like a cheerleader type of a trainer instead of like a strategic type of trainer. So if Anthony Joshua wanted to lean towards having Ben Davison around, I'm not all too sure about all that. So that wouldn't necessarily be, at least I won't think it would be a good move for him. You know what I'm saying? But that's how I think about that one, man. Um, what else did I have on here? I know that there's some things going down. We know what's going down next week, or on Saturday. They call it the Battle of the Baddest. Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou. They're I ain't I ain't all too excited about all that. I know that it's a heavyweight card. It's like part of that too. That you're gonna have a good number of heavyweight fights included in that card. You have Fabio Wardley versus David Adelaide. Yeah, Joseph Parker versus Simon Keane. Arslan Bakhmakbudov versus Agron Smakisi. What? No. Yo, hold on. Arslan Bakhmakbudov against Agron Smakisi. No. Like Makhmudov is a top 5 contender in the WBC and WBA, and you mean to tell me that he's facing who? No, bro, that ain't it, man. That ain't it. Say Gabrielle Fedora was in the the bout that she had there, like I said, with Arlie Musino. And I look, and yeah, like I said, Scrappy had the standout performances yesterday. Santillan is top ranked new welterweight with the WBO slot. I was mentioning earlier. I have to see what the WBO says here. I mean, they did have their convention recently. They're scheduled to have their updated rankings. I thought it was going to be this weekend, but they didn't update them. So, maybe this will be it. We'll see what their updated rankings are in the next couple of days. So, maybe we'll have Santillan there as the new number 1 contender there in the WBO rankings for welterweight. But, like I said, in reference to their situation, I don't know what they're going to do as far as like their mandatory challenges. That other card was unexpected, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, I did mention a thing there with Joshawn James getting the knockout win over David Stevens. I mean, that was mentioned, last week in the telecast there with Coach Ronnie. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, it was a wild card there for Golden Boy. It was a wild card there for that Golden Boy card, man. Like I said, I mean, boxing, anything can pretty much happen in the sport of boxing. You expect the unexpected at times, so that's why you got what you got, this past weekend, But back to the thing there with that boxing schedule, that, thing there, Battle of the Baddest is supposed to be on ESPN pay-per-view. That Bakhmudov versus Makisi. I don't know where that came from. Like y'all could have had Makhmudov versus Joseph Parker or against Fabio Wardley. Like that's who you could have in order to have, at least have a little bit more clarity in the heavyweight division as far as like who would be out there as far as like future contenders there in the heavyweight division, but not, these type of fights here like Makisi or Joseph Parker versus Simon Keane. I mean, Simon Keane ain't, there in the rankings. You know what I'm saying? Joseph Parker is in the rankings here in these sanctioned bodies, but not Simon Keane. So, why have that fight? But it's just more of like, this being in Saudi Arabia, and in Saudi Arabia, they don't really care about, matchups all too tough. It's just basically entertainment for them. So that's why, they were able to just have this card and put all that stuff together. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, you have that, and then also world title fight in the super featherweight division of Shaki Foster against Eduardo Hernandez. Shaki Foster, of course, won the belt against Ray Vargas. Ray Vargas was, going up to, try to get that particular belt there after being at 126, but ended up losing to Shaki Foster. So Shaki Foster getting one of those mandatory challenger or mandatory defenses out of the way against Eduardo Hernandez. I think after this, if he gets a win, he'll go up against Pablo Vicente, most likely, or whatever it is. But I'm just seeing that as something where he should be favored to win that particular bout there against Eduardo Hernandez, and then after that, we'll see how that kind of like has him positioned to face some of these other fighters there in that 130-pound division. Eduardo Hernandez is there with a record of 34-1, 31 of those victories by way of knockout. And it is in Mexico. So, hey, Shaki got to be on his game. He got to be on his game, man. You got to be on his game in this one, But, outside of that, man, we'll see if Foster will be able to, pull this off and then move on to, having, I guess, another defense of that WBC belt before, potentially having a unification bout in the super featherweight division, which you really don't have that many unification bouts at super featherweight anyway. But besides that, but that's what they got as far as like the schedule for next Saturday. You do have fights over in Orlando on Friday, including Amanda Serrano versus Delina Ramos. That's supposed to be a scheduled 12-round bout there for that fight. So be a first there in women's boxing, 12 rounds there, for the unified featherweight titles. So is it like 12-by-3 or whatever it is? So that's going to be something, I guess, for some fight fans to, watch out for. But yeah, other than that, there's going to be also some action that's going to be on ESPN Plus for those that are subscribed to ESPN Plus too. But that following week, you also have Joe Cordina defending his title there in that 130-pound division. So you're going to have two world title bouts at 130 within a week of each other. So you're going to have a little bit of action here in the boxing scene for those that kind of like keep up with all that's going on around the world, not just over in the United States and the UK or whatnot. So that's pretty much what they had. But that's mostly what's going on. I mean, everything kind of like that Super Matthias Ergachev fight that was scheduled for November 4th has been moved over to be on the card for November 25th with that Benavidez versus Demetrius Andrade. So that one card that was supposed to be first it was supposed to be in Minnesota, then it was moved over to the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas. Now it's going to be part of that card with Benavidez and Andrade. So that wait a minute. Whenever you're ready, I need details on Cody Crowley's retirement. What? No. See, hold on. Man, we it's like we get news on the fly here. Cody Crowley's retirement. Come on, man. We can't have Cody Crowley's there, man. You know what I'm saying? That like Cody Crowley is a welterweight, highly ranked welterweight contender. You mean to tell me that Cody Crowley is saying like he's he's retired or something like that. Like, I mean, but, but, he has been dealing with, some things in the, recent memory, you know what I'm saying? So, um, he's been having battles. I think it was, what is it? His father had, recently passed. So maybe, I think, he's been dealing with that or whatnot. But I mean, he had this recent post on Instagram, man. He said, pay your own way to the top. He's there, like I said, WBC at number one, number two in the WBO, and number three in the IBF. So he's, really been out there as far as like working his way around that top of the welterweight division. And I they said something in reference to his retirement, man. I don't know where in the world that's coming from. I have no idea where that's coming from. You know what I'm saying? There's also supposed to be some news in reference to Keith Thurman being back in the ring. Like Keith Thurman was going to be in part of a fight card that's in December. I'm like, wait a minute. So you're gonna have Keith Thurman, finally getting himself in the ring. You know what I mean? And that's the thing about it, man. He's supposed to be back in action here in December. So we had that as far as like some news. Keith Thurman being part of a fight card. Man, this is. But the thing, like I said, with Cody Crowley, that's gonna be wild. But yeah, Thurman versus Stanionis, like that should have been set up, a while ago. So that's the thing. He says he's tired of not getting access to fights on Instagram, so he retired. Oh man, no man, I have to see that joint, man, because that must have been on IG Live or something. You know what I'm saying? I must have missed that IG Live of Cody Crowley. He said he's tired of not getting access to fights on IG. Man, I don't know, dude. Like there was like still a number of fighters that he probably could have fought. And like I said, man, the thing there with what I said with Cody Crowley and Boots. You said Boots turned it. I mean, not Boots, of course. Crowley turned it down, man. Said that Crowley turned down the fight with Boots Ennis. So he could have had that fight with Jerome Boots Ennis, man. So I don't know, man. But yeah, man, Keith Thurman, man, he'll be going into the ring there, like I said, against Giovanni Santillan. To be honest, I thought that fight could have been set up a while ago. Santillan, I noticed Santillan had that little hang up there with Virgil Ortiz, but outside of that, why not just go ahead and have that fight with Keith Thurman? Because I mean, Santillan said, "Hey, I mean, he could have fought, Boots Ennis, but he was like, I don't." That was a wild thing too, right? So, Giovanni Santillan had an interview. What was it? A couple weeks back, right? And he said that he needed like a few fights to get himself ready for Jaron Ennis, right? But now he ain't about here with Keith Thurman. That's crazy. I'm like, so you mean to tell me that you said, hey, you might need like a quote unquote tune up or something like that in order to get yourself ready for Jaron Ennis, but when it comes to Keith Thurman, you like, oh man, he ain't had a fight in a while. He might, be He might be rusty. Man, I'll be ready for him. That's kind of wild, man. No, you wild, man. You wild. Oh no. I think he good on that front. I think he good on that front. But yeah, man, standing on this, that's kind of that's kind of interesting there that he's lined up for this bout there against Thurman, man. That's kind of get me, man. Uh, but that's gonna be something. That's gonna be something. That's gonna be on December, scheduled for December 9th. We know that Haney versus Prograis is scheduled for December 9th. I think there's supposed to be another fight card on December 9th too, man. If I'm not mistaken. I think they were supposed to line up a fight. I think they're supposed to be Heisman weekend. So Top Rank usually has a card on Heisman weekend. I think they're supposed to have Robert C. Ramirez defending his title there, and they're supposed to be in Orlando, So you're going to have a whole lot of action there for December 9th, scheduled for December 9th. But yeah, Keith Thurman versus Giovanni Santillan. Wow. We'll see. We'll see how that's going to be, man. But yeah, that's going to be crazy to have those have that fight happen. But yeah, but for real though, I got to look into that whole thing with Cody Crowley, yo. I'm gonna see if I could find that joint as far as like if he said like, hey man, I'm kind of like disappointed into what's been happening. I ain't been really getting the fights that I want or whatever it is, and I'm like, if that's the case, man, yeah, that's gonna be wild. But I think he's gonna have some. I think there's gonna be something out there for Cody Crowley, man. I think something's gonna be out there for him. You know what I'm saying? But outside of that, really ain't got that much else, to kind of like jump on or talk about. Just had this little thing here to summarize what was going on Saturday. We'll see if we get, like I said, I'm trying to follow up with Mario Barrios, and of course after his win over your Dennis Ugas, and I want to get his reaction to Giovanni Santillan calling him out. Let's see what he says about that. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, it would be a good little matchup there in the welterweight division. Mario Barrios is now the interim champion, WBC interim welterweight champion. So you're gonna have a good number of things there that you can sort out at welterweight, and that would be a good fight to have there at that particular point for both of those guys. So I like to see it that would kind of like sort itself out. But yeah, outside of that, that's pretty much what I got. Thanks for everybody that has joined here live on this particular podcast. We'll be right back at it next week. Hopefully we have something scheduled for the midweek report. Try to get some more information with reference to the WBO. Hopefully they'll update their rankings. I think we're also gonna have an update for the WBC rankings this week as well. So we're gonna see, different fighters moving different positions here in those rankings to see what possible matchups could be set up. So, boxing fans, y'all be on the lookout for that. But outside of that, you really don't have much else for y'all. Once again, I thank everyone for joining in. If y'all can hit the like button on your way out, and y'all hit the share button also, man. Just share, give support to the Boxing Source, and also leave a comment if you're getting the recording. Leave a comment. You know what I'm saying? As far as like the reactions to what happened over the weekend and stuff like that. But I'll catch y'all later. Like I said at the end of every show, folks, point of boxing is hit, not get hit, not a sin and trade. On that note, folks, I'm out. Have a good evening, everybody.